welcome back. I thought it would be a really cool idea to do a video to talk about like when would be a good time to see a couples therapist. So first of all, I think if you clicked on this video after seeing the title, I'm gonna go ahead and say it's probably a good idea, right? Like there's a lot of you know, in magazines, like tests like, am I an alcoholic or do I have a drinking problem? And I heard somebody say once that people who don't have a drinking problem typically don't fill out those surveys. So if you clicked on this video to find out if you should, I'm gonna say you might as well. I'll start with this too. Like, there's really never a bad time to come in. And even if you feel like your relationship's doing really well, that's actually one of the best times to come in and see a couples counselor. And it's usually because like there's a little something off, like maybe disconnection isn't happening as often, maybe you're having fights in a way you used to not have them, or you're finding your value system is starting to not feel as aligned as it once did. But overall, you're generally still really in a good space. Perfect time to come in. You're motivated. You are still kind of like in this place of, I want this relationship to be successful and I'm willing to put in the work and I'm willing to make changes. Often when couples wait too long, they have been sitting in resentment for some time. You know, there is a statistic that most therapists, a lot of the times it's written on their websites, that say couples will wait 7 years from like the first time they recognize that there was a problem before they actually reach out to a couples therapist. And it's great. I mean, it's always great that you want to come in, but after all of that time, I can't tell you how many issues have come up that haven't been resolved, that are just sitting there, and there's a lot of anger, and sometimes people are just over it. Like, they don't want to move. They don't want to move towards like moving closer. They don't want to make changes. You know, they're cool if the other person wants to change, but you know, they're to the point where there's been a lot of water under the bridge and it's really hard to get out of. We've talked about negative sentiment and positive sentiment. It's hard to get out of negative sentiment, particularly if you've been in it for that many years. So point being, really a good time to come in when you're just starting to notice some issues, but overall feeling really good. You're probably going to see a really great result and be able to kind of be in for a few months and go ahead and work on those tools on your own. I'd also say if you have noticed that your conflict is happening more often and you're getting escalated much quicker than you used to. You might bring up an issue and then there's a defensive remark and then you're off. You take this, what I call, you take this like left turn into like process town, and it becomes how you have, like, you're fighting about how you fight, not about the issue. You know, it's like, there you go again, and I knew you were gonna say that, and oh, there you go, walk away. And it's all about like how you have the conflict. And when people do that in front of me in my office, I'm always like, I'm so confused. Like, what are we talking about? What just happened? Do you hear yourselves? Like, you're repeating yourself. You're going back and forth, but no one's asking the other one questions. And I have not heard a single feeling uttered. You know, a single feeling that's been impacted or been hurt or been bothered. And I haven't heard a need. I'm just hearing this very process-oriented fight. So if you know that that's kind of where you've been, you're getting really into that, you know, pursuer, distancer, attack, defend, back and forth, and it's happening more and more often, super good time to call and come and see a therapist. The other is if you are starting to report, I hear this all the time, this is one of, like, I guess you can call it a niche of mine, and it's more of just what's showed up in my office over the years, and that is when you can describe your relationship more like we're roommates than romantic partners. You know, we're two people, oftentimes we're co-parenting, so we're two people co-parenting in a home, but there's not a lot of connection. Bids have probably stopped, you know, maybe because the turning, like mindlessly turning away, was happening. So then we're probably not making as much time for even physical intimacy, probably not a lot of like affection happening, appreciations are probably not happening, and so we're just two people, and we're living in that logistical world, right? So I've talked a lot about putting love over logistics, and I started that because of how many people I was seeing that were in roommate syndrome, and not always, but a very big percentage of those people are people who have children, and their kids have, you know, usually in about the like 7 to 14 age range, and it's just been happening, and this just over time they look and they're like, okay, there's like no romance, there's no passion, you know, we're not like sexy, we're not talking to each other, it's not hot to talk about logistics, right? So so we're just feeling like roommates. If you like would describe your relationship like that, you can get on the phone, call a therapist. If you feel as though like I can't bring up anything to my partner, I can't bring up how I feel because I'm gonna get this really negative reaction, and so you don't bring up any of your feelings, and then one day you just like your top blows, your lid flips, and it's like a really like disproportionate reaction to probably what was coming toward you, but you've been pushing those feelings down for so long. And so you'll say maybe, oh, well, I finally said how I feel and I got this really big like reaction back, and it's you know, you really didn't say how you felt. Like, you didn't say it when you felt it early on. You said it, and when you finally were able to bring it up, you said it in a pretty critical manner. So if you feel like you don't know how to bring up issues, right? Like if I've either tried and it doesn't come up with a good result, my influence in this relationship doesn't feel like it gets accepted, I don't really feel heard, and so I just have stopped bringing up things. It is really important to remember that you have needs, and it's okay to have needs, and to be able to express those needs in your relationship and express how you're feeling. And if you have come to the place where that doesn't feel safe, whether it's I don't trust my partner with my feelings, or I don't know how to talk to them without it getting into some sort of conflict, again, pick up the phone, get online. That is a really telltale sign, like we need to get in for some therapy. And I gotta tell you, like, waiting doesn't help, right? Like, you start to feel it, make the call. And then last, this is a huge one, and it could be pre or post, but having children changes the relationship 100% of the time. Now, it looks different, right? So, I mean, if you are already really struggling and then you had kids, you're probably going to struggle more. If you're doing pretty well and you had kids, you're probably still going to struggle. You know, 67 to 69% of couples report like a significant drop in relationship satisfaction after the birth of their first child. That's a huge number. Like, that tells you something. You know, children are amazing. They are beautiful. They are this like acknowledgement, or this, you know, this love that we've been able to kind of produce to the world from our relationship, but it changes it. That transition is brutal, and it can be more brutal for some and less for others. But if we walk in there and we don't feel like that's something that's going to be changed, or it's not going to be changed to that degree, we're doing ourselves a disservice. You know, do some research on it. I work with a lot of couples in the pre-baby therapy, and sometimes I feel a little bit like a Debbie Downer, but I'm just trying to let you know things are going to change. And so, and it's like, not, I don't want to say normal, but kind of normal, like a lot. And what I mean that is that a lot of people go through it. And so that when you start to experience those things after baby, you don't feel like it's just your relationship. Like, it's pretty common to start to experience some frustration. I mean, you're having a baby, and so now you're doing a lot more with a lot less. Like, patience starts to go away. Competition starts to creep back in, like who's doing more. Sleep deprivation, it's like legit for real, can cause depression, and it is a challenge. the way we used to just interact with the world and like, oh, let's just run out and go for a jog. Like, that doesn't happen, you know, like, let's just go have a nice dinner. And sometimes it can and just sometimes it can't. But coming and talking to a therapist and being ready for and having like real aligned expectations of what's going to happen is only going to help you. Learning communication skills and getting them like solid before baby comes, because you're going to be more tired and less patient after baby. And so like knowing that that's going to happen, having already learned some of these really great communication skills is only going to benefit and help you get through that time easier, right? Because, you know, it goes in these transitions. So we have our children, right when we have them, we start to experience some disconnection, some frustration, and if we're not skilled with the tools and that just keeps going, then we get into the roommate syndrome. It happens. Like, it's amazing when I ask people, when did this first start happening to you? And then it's probably after we had, you know, Jasmine. And I've heard it so many times that like, it's not just a fluke. So if you are pregnant, I highly, highly, highly recommend coming in and doing some pre-baby therapy. So I am always someone that you can contact, and potentially I can see you. I work online. I can provide more coaching services to those out of the state of Washington. If you're local in Seattle, I can see you in my office once we start seeing people in the office again. Or I have just a really amazing network of therapists that I would feel really confident handing off in all different states. So I hope that helped. This was the list of when you should see a therapist, and, you know, end with like, really, you should see one at any time. Like, even if you're doing really well, you're probably only going to get better, and you're going to learn some really awesome skills and be willing to learn them. So have a beautiful day, and I will talk to you soon.